2,000 years. That is how long a chamber beneath the Temple Mount remained sealed before researchers breached it. Inside, they found a stone basin covered in ash, inscribed with PaleoHebrew words that match biblical descriptions of only one place in history, the Holy of Holies. He who dwells here, his spirit never leaves. But here is the catch. Ancient hands sealed this chamber with deliberate finality, blocking every entrance, filling every staircase with rubble, as if they wanted whatever lay inside hidden forever. The question is why, and what else remains buried beneath the most contested piece of ground on Earth? The catastrophe. In 1999, bulldozers began ripping through soil beneath the Temple Mount. The Islamic Waqf had decided to construct a new underground mosque in an area known as Solomon's Stables. The project was unauthorized by Israeli authorities. It was conducted without archaeological supervision, and it involved the removal of hundreds of truckloads of earth from beneath one of the most historically significant sites on the planet. That soil, saturated with 3,000 years of artifacts, was dumped unceremoniously in the Kidron Valley outside the old city walls. Treated like construction debris, discarded like garbage. This 35-acre limestone plateau represents the single most sacred piece of ground on Earth. For Jews, this is where King Solomon built the first temple nearly 3,000 years ago, housing the Ark of the Covenant in a chamber so sacred only the high priest could enter once per year. That temple was destroyed by Babylonians in 586 BCE. A second temple rose and fell to Roman legions in 70 CE. For Muslims, this is the noble sanctuary where Muhammad ascended to heaven. For Christians, this is where Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers. 3 faiths. 1. Hilltop. And a political arrangement so fragile that any archaeological activity could spark riots, diplomatic crises, or war. One misplaced shovel could ignite an international incident. So for over a century, the secrets beneath the Temple Mount remained untouchable, until the Waqf's bulldozers changed everything. When Israeli archaeologists saw truckloads of irreplaceable history being dumped like garbage, they were devastated. Millennia of potential discoveries had been ripped from context and scattered without documentation. But 2 researchers saw something else, an opportunity. Gabriel Barquet had spent his entire career studying Jerusalem's ancient past. He had already made one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Tiny silver scrolls inscribed with the oldest biblical texts ever recorded. Now in his 60s, watching sacred soil being hauled to a landfill, something broke inside him. He could not let 3,000 years of human heritage disappear. His colleague Zachi Dvira shared the same fire. Together, they launched the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Operating out of a public park in East Jerusalem, they began the painstaking process of recovering what had been lost. Volunteers arrived from around the world. Day after day, year after year, they sifted through that discarded earth by hand, bucket by bucket, fragment by fragment. What they found was staggering. Over 500,000 artifacts emerged: coins from the time of Herod, arrowheads from the Crusader era, jewelry from Islamic periods, pottery shards spanning dozens of civilizations. Then came the discovery that made researchers pause. A volunteer noticed a small, hardened lump of clay, flattened and cracked with age. When examined under magnification, it revealed itself to be a bulla, an ancient seal impression once used to secure official documents. The inscription was PaleoHebrew. It read, "Belonging to Gedaliahu, son of Immer." The name Immer appears in the book of Jeremiah as a priestly family active during the First Temple period. This tiny piece of clay confirmed the existence of a real person mentioned in Scripture, someone who had lived and worked on this very site nearly 3,000 years ago. More bullae followed, names and titles that aligned with biblical records, symbols depicting menorahs, temple gates, and priestly garments. But here is the catch. These First Temple artifacts were not distributed randomly throughout the soil. They concentrated in specific areas, pointing toward particular sections of the mount. Sections that corresponded with ancient descriptions of sacred zones. The sifting project had not just recovered lost artifacts, it had provided a map. Breadcrumbs leading somewhere specific. Now scientists needed to follow them to their source. If you are fascinated by forbidden history like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss what comes next. The hidden network between 2021 and 2024. A new generation of researchers began combining cutting-edge technology with overlooked historical documents. Their focus was the southern edge of the Temple Mount, near the Western Wall tunnels. British surveyors during the Ottoman and Mandate eras had mapped strange underground voids in this area. Chambers, staircases, hollow spaces that defied explanation. But for generations, those reports had gathered dust in archives, dismissed as incomplete or unreliable. The new team decided to verify them. Since physical excavation beneath the Temple Mount remained forbidden, they deployed ground-penetrating radar, the same technology that had detected hidden chambers inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. The scans revealed something remarkable. Beneath the bedrock, straight edges and geometric shapes appeared where natural geology should have produced only irregular stone. The signatures of man-made construction, sealed away for centuries. When researchers overlaid the radar data with hand-drawn British maps from the early 1900s, the outlines matched. The same corridors, the same blocked staircases, the same suspicious voids. A century of technological advancement had just confirmed what explorers had suspected long ago. But here is the catch. As workers carefully cleared debris from an ancient Herodian structure in the Western Wall tunnels, they uncovered a partially buried staircase carved into limestone. It descended into darkness. What they found at the bottom was a forgotten antechamber. The upper walls bore Byzantine-era carvings, faded crosses, inscriptions from the 4th or 5th century. This space had clearly served as an early Christian worship site. But when researchers examined the floor, they discovered something far older beneath it. The foundation stones were massive, finely cut ashlar blocks stacked with precision rarely seen after the First Temple period. Then came the detail that sent chills through the research team. A secondary staircase, half collapsed and filled with rubble, led even deeper into the bedrock. It had been deliberately blocked, not by natural collapse, not by the passage of time, by human hands. Someone long ago had wanted this passage sealed forever. They had intentionally hidden whatever lay beyond. The subterranean machine. As researchers mapped the areas around these sealed chambers, they discovered something that shifted their understanding entirely. A network of underground cisterns, channels, and aqueducts carved directly into the bedrock. The system was vast, interconnected, and engineered with sophistication that defied expectations for its era. Carbon dating of mineral residue around the plaster linings produced a result that stunned the team. These waterworks were not Roman. They were not Herodian. They dated to the First Temple period, the 8th to 9th century BCE, but the age was not what shocked the experts most. It was the design. The system demonstrated hydraulic planning far ahead of It's time. Narrow feeding tunnels allowed rainwater runoff to fill reservoirs in ways that prevented stagnation. Overflow ducts redirected excess water to secondary chambers, preventing flooding while maintaining supply. The engineering accounted for pressure, flow rate, and seasonal variation in a region notorious for dry summers. This was not primitive infrastructure. This was sacred engineering. When researchers overlaid maps of the cistern network with ancient textual descriptions, connections emerged that had never been made before. Several cisterns aligned perfectly with locations mentioned in the Book of Chronicles, which described water preparations made by Israelite kings to support temple rituals. One particularly large basin sat beneath a spot that, according to Hebrew texts, had once held the altar of sacrifice. That basin was lined with thick layers of ash and faint traces of organic residue, signs of repeated use over many generations. Ritual hand-washing, cleansing of ceremonial tools, libation offerings. This was not primitive religion. It was a machine of holiness, and the channels led directly to those sealed chambers that no one had entered in over 2,000 years. The stone of the Shekinah. The researchers moved carefully through the darkness, past ancient water channels, past buried priestly chambers, past the blocked staircase that someone had sealed with such deliberate finality. Dr. Yuval Baruch, the lead archaeologist, felt his pulse hammering in his ears. The passage narrowed. The air grew thick, ancient, untouched by human lungs for millennia. And there, at the end of a corridor that had not seen light since before the Common Era, they found a sealed stone threshold. Baruch's hands trembled as he helped remove the final stones. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The weight of what they were about to see pressed down on every person in that tunnel. The only sound was breathing, rapid, shallow. The chamber beyond was small. No, more than 10 feet across. Its walls were cut straight into bedrock, smooth and undecorated. But what sat in the center stopped every person in their tracks. A stone basin, round and shallow, half buried in ash. Around it, fragments of burned incense, small offerings, and blackened clay oil lamps arranged with unsettling care. Unlike other spaces that had collapsed naturally over time, this chamber had been deliberately preserved. Whoever sealed it had intended for it to remain untouched forever. The team stood in absolute silence. Baruch later described the moment as feeling like time had stopped, like the air itself was holding its breath. One of the younger researchers, Dr. Sarah Mizrahi, had tears streaming down her face before anyone had spoken a word. They all sensed what they were looking at. They just could not bring themselves to say it. The basin bore markings faded by millennia, but legible under the archaeologist's lights. The script was PaleoHebrew. Baruch leaned closer. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "He who dwells here, his spirit never leaves." The words hung in the stale air. Someone gasped. Mizrahi covered her mouth with both hands. But here is the catch. Those words were not random poetry. They were not a general blessing or dedication. They aligned with ancient biblical descriptions of only one place in existence, the Holy of Holies. The innermost chamber of the temple where, according to Scripture, the Shekinah, the divine presence of God, was said to physically dwell, a space so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once per year, on the Day of Atonement. No artifact from that space had ever been recovered. No physical evidence of its existence had ever surfaced. Until now. The dating was verified. The lamps matched other examples from the 8th to 7th century BCE. The basin's limestone composition was consistent with materials used during Solomon's reign. The inscriptions' phrasing and structure were identical to phrases found in First Temple-era religious texts, some of which had only been recovered from the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century. This chamber delivered what generations of archaeologists had only dreamed of finding: physical, datable evidence of the most sacred zone beneath the Temple Mount, evidence that aligned directly with biblical tradition, evidence that transformed faith into fact. Someone thousands of years ago had left a message, a testimony carved in rock to ensure the truth would never be forgotten, no matter how many empires rose and fell above it. The revelation. The discovery has sent quiet shockwaves through the academic world, but the announcement has been careful, fragmented, deliberately vague. The authorities who know what was found understand the implications. The Temple Mount remains sacred to three global religions. Any claim that one tradition's narrative has been definitively proven could ignite crises that spread far beyond Jerusalem's walls. This discovery is a lit match in a room full of gunpowder. Some Christian communities see the find as prophetic fulfillment, tangible confirmation that the biblical accounts were historical record. Evangelical theologian Dr. Michael Brown called the discovery the most significant archaeological validation of Scripture since the Dead Sea Scrolls, though he cautioned that its implications would take decades to fully understand. Some Orthodox Jewish leaders have responded with caution, even mourning. Rabbi David Lau, a former chief rabbi of Israel, reportedly stated that while the discovery confirms what the faithful always knew, disturbing the area of the Shekinah without proper spiritual preparation remains a transgression of the highest order. For them, this discovery is not triumph. It is trespass. Islamic authorities have remained largely silent, though sources suggest intense concern about how the findings might be used to advance territorial claims. The delicate status quo governing the Temple Mount has never felt more fragile. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the scientific race has begun. Researchers are now lobbying for access to deploy muon imaging technology, the particle scanning method that detected hidden voids inside the Great Pyramid of Giza in 2017. The hope is that without disturbing the surface, they can map additional chambers that may still lie sealed. But what stunned many experts was not just the age of the discovery. It was what it represented about the people who built it. This was not primitive worship conducted by superstitious ancients. This was sophisticated sacred engineering, precise hydraulics, deliberate preservation, a civilization that understood something profound about the relationship between physical space and divine presence, and encoded that understanding into stone designed to last millennia. What waits beneath chambers remains sealed. Messages remain unread. The radar scans revealed at least 3 additional voids that have never been breached, one directly beneath the dome of the rock itself, measuring approximately 40 feet across. Researchers believe this void may contain the largest undiscovered space beneath the entire Temple Mount. What lies inside remains unknown. The political and religious barriers to investigating it may never be overcome, but the door has been cracked open. For 3,000 years, this ground held its silence. Now, for the first time, researchers have breached a chamber that was never meant to be opened, and they found exactly what ancient texts said would be there. What other truths lie buried beneath the surface? If this discovery changed what you thought you knew, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into lost history. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think researchers should open the remaining sealed chambers? Or should some secrets stay buried forever? Click here for more forbidden discoveries that mainstream archaeology does not want you to see.